So we have gone through the whole book. So what we'll do is, we'll quickly run through various sections and see how the theme develops in the book. I had given you some statistics also last time, how many sentences Ashwapati spoke, how many sentences Nara spoke, how many sentences the Queen spoke, how many Savitri spoke, and then on the basis of that, we also estimated the total duration of the conversation that must have taken amongst them. And the estimate is roughly 3 hours, about 3 hours or so. And if Narad is leaving the palace at noon, it means he must have come to the palace at 8 o'clock, because after his arrival in the palace, he sings for an hour about the lotus heart of love. He begins his song to the royal host. He sings about the lotus heart of love for 1 hour. And in that context, heart of love, lotus heart of love, Savitri enters the palace, and then the theme starts developing from that point onward. So it means it was roughly a 4-hour session in the morning from 8 to 12. Which day, that may be a little difficult to pinpoint, but we can certainly say that it was in the summer. And we can go a step further and say that it might have been sort of transition between the Indian summer and the Indian rain, monsoon. It could have been in the month of Jyeshtha or around June. So which year, that we can't say, but it is summer, it is June, and if you go by the Indian tradition, then it has to be the no moon night, Amavasya, Jyeshtha Amavasya. And it is on that day also the death of Satyavan occurs 1 year after Narad makes his disclosure of the death of Satyavan. So that is the little background. Now, where did all that happen? Of course, it happened in Madra, ancient Madra. Now, can we locate where the Madra could be and all that? That is a little difficult question. It could be anywhere in the northwestern part of India. Sometimes people even say it could be somewhere in Afghanistan in those days. And then she crosses all these places and comes down here. But if we go by the mention of the river in Savitri itself, he gives the simile of Savitri, how she grew in the palace, the way a majestic tree grows on the banks of Alaknanda. So if that is a sufficient hint, then we could say that Madra was on the banks of Alaknanda river. Alaknanda. Now, Alaknanda is the tributary of the Ganges and meets the Ganges in the place what is called Devaprayag in the lower Himalayas. So, we can say that in the lower Himalayas, on the banks of Alaknanda, in the ancient time, on some summer day in the month of June at 12 o'clock, all these things have happened. So that is the only kind of detail we can get from the description we have here in this epic, you see. But at the same time, it is a timeless epic. It does not really pinpoint a particular geographical location. It does not pinpoint a particular moment of time in history. It is a sort of a legend which is constantly renewed, and it is the renewal of this legend which goes on and on and on, and finally culminates into this particular narrative here, what we have. So, the book starts with the visit of Narad to Ashwapati's palace in silent bounds bordering the mortal's plain. So, that is the location where Narad is living, silent bound bordering the mortal's plain, between the mortal and the immortal. Well, it is there you have the abode of Vishnu himself. Narad is the devotee of Vishnu, and he comes from Vishnu's abode to the earth, and when he is coming to the earth, he is carrying the word of fate. In a specific context, he is carrying the word of fate. It means that word of fate is loaded with the intention, power of Vishnu himself. Vishnu, who is the sustainer of this creation, who carries this creation forward. So, when he is bringing that word of fate, he is really bringing the power of the sustainer into this creation. What is it that he wants to sustain? He wants to sustain the evolutionary march of this creation forward. And it is in that context, therefore, Narad is coming here. He is coming with the word of fate, word of Vishnu himself, in that sense. Now, we have here the transitional lines. We'll skip them, we have already seen them. But the important point is these few lines here. Narad is a spiritual being. He has a spiritual body. He lives in the heavens of Vishnu in a spiritual subtle body. He is walking into the palace of Ashwapati in a physical body. How does that happen? A spiritual being taking a physical body. He is coming in flesh and bones and all that thing into the palace. How the spiritual get transmuted to the physical? By what chemistry it happens? That is what we have got here. It is by the process of Sankhya, the 5 elements by which the material creation comes into existence here. Akash, Vayu, Tejas, Apas and Prithvi. That is sky, ether, then air, then fire, then water, and finally the earth. These are the 5 subtle elements, the constituents of the material creation. So he gathers these things, he transforms his physical body, his spiritual body into the physical by employing these elements, and then he walks into the palace, you see. While he is coming, he is also singing, chanting the name of Vishnu. all along on the path, because he is coming with Vishnu's mission, and it is that chant which is going to ring throughout this entire creation, you see. He says, he sang the name of Vishnu and birth. That is the most important thing. Sang the name of Vishnu and birth. That is the first song Narada is singing. How does the immortal take the mortal birth? Vishnu, the immortal, how does it take the mortal birth, the human birth? By what transition? Now, we are simply told here, he sang the name of Vishnu and birth. And the birth. How Vishnu, the immortal, takes the mortal birth. Yes, yes, yeah. Vishnu, I am generalizing by calling it immortal, the immortal. How the transition takes place. Now, he has simply told us that this is what happens. The immortal is taking the mortal birth. By what process? By what mechanism? By what kind of chemistry it happens? That is not given here. That is not given here. And in fact, the whole process of materialization of the spiritual, how the spiritual becomes material, in what manner. Alright, you are saying these 5 elements, etc. But actually, by what kind of a chemistry it happens, that is not detailed out here. That is the occult aspect of the knowledge. And the poet is not writing a thesis on the occultism here. He is simply describing the sequence of operations what has happened. In other words, he knows that Narad is fully aware of the process of this transmutation from the spiritual to the material. The poet assumes that we are also very knowledgeable about that kind of a thing. So he is not describing, he is simply telling, look, this is what has happened. And he says, alright, if there are details, you supply those details because you are aware of them, you see. But we are ignorant people, we don't know, you see. In fact, this whole business is here. How the non-material becomes material, and the reverse, the material becomes the non-material, transubstantiation or what I want to call it. How that happens, that occult chemistry is occult. Is occult. And perhaps it is so because when this was happening, by what process it underwent that kind of a transition, there was nobody to record it. The Supreme knows it, he does it. He doesn't bother about recording and giving that recipe or chit to you for that, you see. But it's there. The implication is deeper than that. This is not known to us, and therefore, to a large extent, how in the Mother's Yoga of the cells, the transformation is going to occur, that also remains unknown. It is there but remains unknown. How the transformation of the cells will take place, that also. And the mother says very distinctly, very clearly, that knowledge has not been given to me. That knowledge has not been given to me. And therefore, she has to work out all the necessary. She has to do the yoga of the cells and discover the knowledge herself. It is by that process only the cells will open out to the Supreme. They have to learn it. It has not to be given. Not to be. They had to learn it, you see. That is the whole intention behind it. And therefore, that knowledge is kept back. Knowledge is kept back. People like Narad, they know up to a certain extent. Narad is a spiritual body. He can come into the physical body. Because that process is already established in the cosmic operation. So it is possible for Narad to undergo that kind of a transformation, transmutation. But it is impossible that in the present conditions, a supramental being would come and deliver a message to, say, Savitri. He does not know how to materialize. He may operate to somebody. He may operate to somebody, this supramental being. He does not know how to materialize here. That has to be worked out. So in that sense, we are very lucky that Narad is not this supramental being. You see, because he can come and do these things, you see, and do something at least, you see. He can receive this supramental knowledge and deliver it to us. But supramental being, no. He can come physically and walk into the palace and give all those things, you see. So we are really fortunate that Narad is, and he is doing it all in the grace of his Vishnu, in the kindness, in the benevolence of Vishnu. He is doing all these things to us, you see. So he sings 5 songs. How 5 songs of creation. First, how from the inconscient the whole thing started, and ultimately how death will climb to immortality. How death will climb to immortality. It is the death itself, himself, who is making the progress. And he is aware of it. He knows the intention of it. And then he sees the truth that cries from night's blind deeps. For what? To awake consciousness in beasts and men. The process of evolution, he is describing step by step like that, you see. He sang the glory and marvel still to be born. This is what we have seen last time. Glory and marvel still to be born. Or the future. This is the 5th song he is singing. Narad. And glory and marvel still to be born to what? That bodies become divine and life becomes bliss. That is the whole process now. And of course, the transfiguration and the ecstasy. Now, this is the beauty of Narad's song. He is taking the entire evolution to what point? To transfiguration and ecstasy. That is what has to happen here, you see. Now, this is a new Narad. He is not the Puranic Narad. Puranic Narad does not know about transfiguration, of transformation, or the supramental possibilities, or how it is going to work here. But Narad has done in his world great tapasya, great sadhana, and now he is getting the knowledge. Now he is getting the knowledge that, well, all this is towards transfiguration and ecstasy. Towards transfiguration. So he is what we have here, and what we have here is the updated Narad. He has become up to date now. Shrevandur Narad. Shrevandur. Because that knowledge was not there earlier. In the Puranas, in the earlier traditions, the idea, the possibility of transfiguration and ecstasy, that didn't exist. The possibility was only of immortality, not of transfiguration. So in that sense now Narada is singing, so it is something which is now a new advance over the past spiritual attainments.